Hey, this is Goodfellas History. I'm your host, Nick.
Davis.
And I'm Garrett.
And today we're going to talk about the fake populists, or what I like to call demagogues, or Nazbol, or just fucking fascists. So, we all saw the TYT v. Jimmy Dore fallout.
Yes.
Chronic sexual harasser getting called out. And then claiming that...
I've dabbled on Twitter, yes.
And then basically made the claim that she was blackmailing him, even though he was the one that released that DM. And talked about it. And really did himself no favors by describing it every step of the way in the light that he thought was best. And now the whole faux populist, left-wing community has surrounded and embraced their savior, Jimmy Dore. So yeah, let's talk about this.
I was going to say, you and I used to both be Jimmy Dore, I guess, subs, yeah?
Yeah, I was a sub to Jimmy Dore. I'm not anymore. Fun
I
fact.
say I never subbed to Jimmy Dore. Want to put that out there.
I'll say this: the
know-
reason I subbed to him was when BLM was doing like a bunch of rallies across the nation, and he did a really good segment on cops. So
Yeah.
I subbed to him for a while, and then I was like, oh, this guy's actually a
Nuts.
lunatic.
So let me roll this back. Okay? The history of Jimmy Dore. You know there's actually a skit that you can see on YouTube of him actually defending Obama? This is back in 2012. Right around the Romney v. Obama era. And he talks about the fact that, a lot of the teabaggers really didn't like Barack Obama because he actually was a self-made man. He didn't inherit his wealth like any proper real American would.
Really?
Yeah.
I had no idea.
Yeah, fun fact. The Obama slaying anti-establishment type actually did a comedy special where he talked about that. He also used to be the aggressive progressive on TYT. And
Kinda
while he
like
was
that.
the aggressive progressive on TYT, he really made some really dumb statements. Like, not voting for Hillary Clinton. So,
No.
there's a really great debate that I think everybody should watch. It's Sam Cedar versus Jimmy Dore on voting for Hillary or not. And
I have watched that. That was excellent.
Sam Cedar predicted virtually everything that Trump was going to do. And Jimmy Dore kept saying, well, I don't think he's going to do that. So, the reason why I'm bringing this up is that, as you guys know, I'm a Marxist, but I'm also a populist. I actually think populism is a really good method of getting really good democratic socialist or libertarian socialist or socialist agendas forward. And it's because I think that these agendas actually benefit everyday people. The population. Jimmy Dore is not a populist. Tucker Carlson is not a populist. Glenn Greenwald is not a populist. There are a lot of people out there who have adopted this mantle of populist that are not. They are demagogues. Now, do you guys know what a demagogue is?
I don't know the correct definition for it, honestly.
Yeah, please tell us.
It is basically a rabble-rouser. The key word in that is demos that's in there, so people. So basically it's a rabble-rouser. It's basically a demagogue. They're basically it's the blind appeal to the people, or rallying up the people. Now, this oftentimes gets confused with populism, and I think some people intentionally try to tie populism to demagoguery, even though I think everybody is susceptible to demagoguery. But what makes these people particularly pernicious is that they try to hide it or mask it in a veneer of morally good things. A good example of this is Tucker Carlson and his anti-war propaganda. When in reality, he's not anti-war. He never was anti-war. Or how he would challenge Trump on his anti-war positions, when you actually analyze his media coverage, he really isn't challenging Trump in anything that he's actually doing. So, this ties back to Jimmy Dore. So, in 2016, Jimmy Dore was an advocate for not voting for Hillary Clinton. He saw Trump as a necessary evil, his words, that would basically force the Democratic Party to change its position because of how bad Trump would be, and then we would get somebody like Elizabeth Warren to be the nominee, and thus breaking the cycle of neoliberal establishment types, fill in the gap with other figures of authority that populists, or these faux populists, like to use. Globalists, neoliberals, establishment, very vague, open-ended terms that you can apply to anybody at any given time. I want you guys to be aware of that.
Mm-hmm.
And, yeah, no, that didn't happen. He fell flat on his fucking face. And this grift keeps on going. So I don't know about you, Davis, but I remember virtually every single time Trump did something bad, somehow we were able to manipulate the narrative into this is actually Hillary Clinton's fault and the Democratic Party's fault.
Oh, I can remember that.
So I want you to think about that, for example. Why is he doing that? Is it because he just really hates Democrats? Maybe. Or is there an alternative narrative, an alternative explanation?
Well, I can see that in, if you want to say he has an ulterior motive, maybe it's just relieving Republicans of their responsibility, because it's always the Democrats' fault. It's not like if there's two sides, it's really just the Democrats, apparently.
Mm-hmm.
This dynamic was really highlighted actually in our most recent election, like during like the Democratic primaries, because we had Bernie platform against Hillary Clinton way back, and then this time it was Bernie versus several others. And that narrative never ended even after Bernie like suspended his campaign. Like it went on into Biden versus Trump, and it was still hit on Democrats, don't hit on the next enemy, even though we've kind of lost already at that point.
I want everybody to realize Andrew Yang and Tulsi Gabbard. These two figures are also faux populists.
Mm-hmm.
And guess who went on Jimmy Dore's show and got Jimmy Dore's support?
Tulsi.
It was Tulsi. And Jimmy Dore went from being a Bernie supporter to a Gabbard supporter. Even though Tulsi Gabbard, when you look at her statements, really didn't support any of the domestic liberal or progressive or socialist reforms that Bernie Sanders was supporting.
Yeah, I remember the day she dropped Medicare for All, actually. I was like, ow.
And
it was all focused on her foreign policy.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to get to that in a second, guys. We're going to talk about Assad apologism and this faux anti-war, anti-imperialist wave that we're dealing with right now. Because, this kind of ties into the Caribbean thing that we talked about with Haiti. Mm-hmm. But I want to stay on to this. So Jimmy Dore was incredibly soft on Tulsi Gabbard for some reason. After when she went on to his show, he very, very quickly became anti-Bernie. Or at least very antagonistic to Bernie. Oh. And then he became very antagonistic in general with progressives like AOC.
I was about to say, I remember like when he started attacking the squad.
In fact, if one looks at the history of Bernie Sanders and Jimmy Dore, and his support of the squad, it's virtually non-existent.
Mm-hmm.
The guy, these are 5-6 people in Congress of hundreds of people, and virtually every single time something bad happened or bad policy got through, they got blamed. Despite the fact that time and time again, they would vote against it, receiving a shit ton of heat for doing so. Like, I wasn't there, but where was Jimmy Dore when Ilhan Omar was being called an anti-Semite?
He was not around, that's where.
Okay. When Rashida Tlaib made her statements. Where the fuck was Jimmy Dore?
Yeah.
So the more and more I looked at it, the more and more I realized that Jimmy Dore is not a populist. He's just hates the Democratic Party.
But I mean, they're not my favorite, but my word.
Well, no, I mean, but it gets to the next thing. So, Jimmy Dore's a useful fucking idiot. You want to know what a useful fucking idiot? It's Jimmy Dore. Because he's providing propaganda for free, might I add, for the right-wingers in this country and the fucking fascists. Because they're able to say, see, there's no left-wing alternative. We're the only people out there that you can truly vote for to get any kind of change. And you know what? Some of the things that you like, we like. All you have to do is not worry about gay people or trans people or people of color. Vote for us and things will get better.
Hate every single minority in America.
Mm-hmm. People need to stop whining about sexism and whining about racism. It doesn't really exist, or it's not as big of an issue as Medicare for all, right? These are narratives that have sprung up, and it's at an alarming rate, and a lot of it is that people misunderstand populism. They misunderstand the difference between pragmatism and abandonment.
Can I ask a question?
Go ahead.
So, has he said anything about Nina Turner at all? Because what I've noticed in, the comment section of like Kyle's videos is they will shit on AOC or like the squad members that are in Congress right now, and they'll be like, oh, just wait till Nina Turner gets in there. Then, apparently, everything will happen, which is not going to happen. And so is the same thing going to happen
This
with
gets
Nina
to
Turner?
This gets to the adjacent people.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I think that Kyle Kulinski is a populist. I think that he actually truly believes in Medicare for all. He wants people's lives to get better. I think he's an honest actor. But I think he's drinking too much of the Kool-Aid. You need to be able to take a step back and actually analyze what's happening. So the reason why a lot of the crowd that surrounds surrounds Jimmy Dore, Kyle Kulinski, the alternative left, as they're trying to be. Okay, the alternative left-wing voice, the reason why they keep falling on their face on a lot of these issues is because they're not grounded in practical reality of politics. In their mind, all they need is a true champion of the people to go to Washington. And then it's Mr. Smith goes to Washington. That's not how this works. Our system is not designed that way. It's never been designed that way. The New Deal was successful due to a confederation between three largely competitive forces. Southern populists, Northern and Western unionists and socialists, and academia. That was the New Deal. That was that alliance. That was that cohort that held together, that brought in an age of the Democratic Party being the dominant political national party. And what Jimmy Dore represents is a further fraying of that alliance. Because that's the alliance that will take down Trump. They'll take down the Republican Party. It still exists. These factions still exist in our society. The socialist faction is greatly disempowered because, guess what? The labor movement was keeled over. The only way to re-empower it is giving socialists breathing room to actually create more unions and have more labor advocacy. So this gets into that populist faction that I'm talking about. There are a lot of genuine populist people out there who maybe don't want to see necessarily hardcore socialist policies, but are more open to more left-wing reforms. These people are being turned off by the likes of Jimmy Dore because they are now apathetic. There's only one natural conclusion if you take the Jimmy Dore path. Because we're not going to get a third party. It's apathy. It's inaction. This is one of the reasons why I can't stand the black pill doomer shit. Because you've allowed yourself to get wrapped or warped in a perspective that nothing you do matters. And who does that power?
It's powering the really the right-wing
It
opposition.
empowers the right wing. It empowers the fascists, and it empowers the Republican Party. So, this gets to my next point. Jimmy Dore is a demagogue, and he is flirting with fascism. This authoritarian moralism that he constantly throws at his audience in his rants and ravings are disconcerting, because they're not based on any reality. It is almost as if anybody he dislikes that day, like in junior high, is enemy number one, persona non grata. So, and it's increasingly becoming more and more authoritarian, where there's no wiggle room for dissension. It's all about ideological purity at that point, and this ideological purity thing, in a general concept, is not so much of an issue, but within these communities specific, are a major issue. So let's talk about the TYT, the Jimmy Dore problem, and everything that's involved in that. TYT, as you guys know, is not my favorite show. I actually have a lot of respect for Anna Kasparian. She has her own segments on The Jacobin. When I listen to her, I feel like she is a strong advocate for socialist policies, as well as foreign policy affairs that I think are reasonable and left-wing and practical, humanitarian. Jake Uger, I don't always agree with. He strikes me as a person that has, once again, best interests in mind. I just think that his overall goal of trying to get there is not the best. That's
I just have to throw in real quick. The Young Turks actually, back in 2016, when I really started getting into politics, kind of were very important in kind of where I am now. So I kind of want to throw that out there just for me. Like, I have a lot of respect for them. I actually still listen to them quite a bit.
Yeah, there's still a lot.
Yeah, and so I think they're, especially back in 2016, I think they were very important.
And the thing is, like I said, I don't think that they're bad. It's just that I want to find my sources. I grind my axioms a little bit deeper than that.
Sure, yeah.
This whole kerfuffle started when TYT called out Aaron Mate. Aaron Mate is a journalist. He's critically acclaimed, and everything goes along with that. But Aaron Mate works for the Gray Zone. Aaron Mate is an anti-American, anti-imperialist. That's not a McCarthyian slur. That is just a simple fact of the matter. Aaron Mate represents a brand of journalism that believes that anywhere the United States is involved is doomed to failure, and that our mere presence in the region is destabilizing. He's made that abundantly clear in his writings, in the dialogue that he performs. More importantly, Aaron Mate has been a guest of the Russian state and paid by the Russian state multiple times when giving speeches about the horrors of U.S. foreign policy. There's actually a well-documented YouTube video where he's give basically a presentation to a Russian audience filled with Russian ministers of the Putin state, basically blasting U.S. foreign policy in Syria. Now, why is this important? This is important because I'm fucking cynical. Gray Zone does not talk about where it gets its funding. It has somewhere around 600 patrons. That's not enough to sustain an establishment like the Gray Zone that goes around the world. So that means that there's alternative sources of funding that they are receiving, and they're not releasing those sources. That's very frustrating or concerning to me. Add on top of it, the chief editor and producer of the Gray Zone, Max Blumenthal, works for RT and Sputnik, both of which are state-owned and state-run media sources in Russia. These are really important things to delineate. It's not the same as PBS or NPR, which are publicly funded, which means the state funds them, but the state doesn't run them. They're not agents of the state. If you work for PBS, you're not an agent of the state. You're just funded by the state.
That is a key difference.
So, why this is important is that Jimmy Dore and many of the Jimmy Dore stands faux populists are Assad apologists. Why they are is because of anti-American, anti-imperialism. So, the important thing that I'm trying to extrapolate from this is that Aaron Mate is not a saint. He's not a disinterested actor. There's been quite a few statements that he's made that have been quite problematic in its accuracy and validity, because it just so happens that they are lying through omission when making certain statements. For example, that is the Syrian weapons attack in Douma. Oftentimes, now, do you guys know anything about this?
I only know a little bit about like the Syrian like attacks and whatnot. It was like chemical weapons, though, wasn't it?
Mm-hmm. So, one engineer that was a part of the OWPC, or was it OPWC? I don't remember. It's an acronym. Basically made the claim that, or made a argument that there was no way for those canisters to have fallen from helicopters, which was the claim and the belief that many people made that those canisters fell from. The overall consensus of the group, based off of the evidence that they were able to collect, was that in fact, actually, that it was very likely that those canisters fell from helicopters, and that this engineer that made the argument against it wasn't really on the ground and really wasn't able to extrapolate the same amount of difference, or the same amount of evidence that the on-the-ground team was able to collect. The OWPC basically confirmed that this was a chemical weapons attack, most likely attributed to falling from the air. These canisters were not planted there. And that the damage done to these canisters were more or less done or caused by the impact that they had against the building itself. So around 42 people died from exposure to chlorine gas. I don't know if you guys know this, but if your body's exposed to chlorine gas, your lungs will literally fill with fluid.
Yep, I was gonna say kind of like liquid, like you basically sort of drown.
You drown in your own bodily fluids.
Crazy.
So, a lot of the people that are in the gray zone Jimmy Dore world will say that that's complete bullshit, that in fact this is a false flag, or that it actually really didn't happen. They will extrapolate that the White Helmets, a non-state action volunteer group of urban retrieval of disaster zones and medical personnel, are in fact actually agents of some secret evil cabal of globalists that want to get involved in Syria. The important thing of this is that the important thing of this is that all of this, just for this one specific case, is what a lot of people use to claim that the Syrian government was not responsible for chemical weapons attacks. Some even go a step further and claim that there were actually no chemical weapons attacks that took place in Syria. Even though there's documented evidence.
I'm gonna say there's supposedly like, what, 37 of them?
That's conservative estimations. Some of these organizations have found somewhere around 300 cases of chemical weapons being used in the Syrian civil war. Now, why is this important? This is important because a lot of these people will try to make the argument, well, look what Bush did with his WMDs in Iraq, and that's how they got involved in Iraq. And any criticism of the Assad regime doing this in the red line will mean that we'll get involved in Syria, and we don't want to get involved in Syria because imperialism bad, war bad. And yeah, war is bad, imperialism is bad. But that's not the issue here. The issue here is you're denying evidence of this regime doing these actions, not for the sake of good, but for the sake of what? To ensure that the Assad regime remains in power? This is why it's called Assad apologism. It's not that, they don't even have to like Assad. They can be critical of Assad, but you're apologizing or trying to deflect reality from the situation in a way that actually ultimately benefits his regime. Now, why is that important? This long extrapolation. What's important about this is this is the antithesis of demagoguery. It's false truths. It's media speak. This gets back to the 14 points. All of it is exposed right here. Action for action's sake. A secret conspiracy. Everything. Globalism. Globalists. It's all there.
Yeah, I agree.
So how does this tie back to, because you were saying with TYT...
So, oftentimes the reason why this spun out with Jimmy Dore is Jimmy Dore white-knighted for Aaron Monte. And Anna Kasparian, who basically felt like there was no possible way for Jimmy Dore and TYT and themselves were going to be able to repair their friendship, decided to let Jimmy Dore know that, hey, we're going to come after you now. You're not going to be this white knight of progressivism anymore. And Jimmy Dore did the intelligent thing of basically outing himself as a sexual harasser.
It was wild.
He and his team have continued down this thing, and you would be, even Steph Zimmerano, his wife, is going along with this. It's just completely normal to sexually harass somebody at work.
Yeah,
they've made the claim that she was his boss, so that therefore he couldn't have sexually harassed her because she was his boss at the time, even though that's not extrapolated. And this gets us to our good friend Glenn Greenwald, the dipshit extraordinaire. You want to find somebody who's really persona non grata within the left, it's Glenn Greenwald right now. And Glenn Greenwald came out in defense of Jimmy Dore. Basically saying that, oh, yeah, of course this DM was blackmail. And no, that's not blackmail. It was a threat.
It wasn't.
It was a threat. It was that we're not taking this anymore and we're going to now do this. It's not blackmail. There's nothing saying, well, if you don't change your behavior, then this is going to get leaked.
Yeah.
That's blackmail.
They're just telling you what they're going to do.
Yeah, they're like, hey, we're just letting you know we're not allies anymore.
You know, would you call a declaration of war blackmail? But Glenn Greenwald went along with this. So, us Vosh fans know what we call this. This is Nosbol. Where left-wing actors are kind of doing some really fashy things. And are getting a little too cozy with fascism and the ideas of fascism. And the ideal of fascism. This, we know what's best for you, and by hook or by crook, we're going to force you to do it. Kind of narrative.
Interesting.
So now Anna Kasparian is still getting sexually harassed online now by Jimmy Dore fans. The Gray Zone gets to cry about how they were called Russian agents, even though they call anybody who disagrees with them agents of the U.S. State Department. Kind of hypocritical of them. And Jimmy Dore gets to cry about how that TYT was mean to him. And everywhere from the Sargon of Akkad dipshits to Kyle Kalinske fans are supporting him. So this gets us to Kyle. Kyle Kalinske, the architect of the bullshit that he's dealing with right now. I've been a fan of saying if you fish in certain waters, don't be surprised what you find. Kyle Kalinske, Crystal Ball, have been fishing in these waters, adjacent to the Jimmy Dore stands. They have built a community that has been largely supported by a lot of these people. And this is what happens. Because in reality, let's really be honest. These are conspiracy theories. The Russiagate thing. Let's take Russiagate. Kyle Kulinski claims that he was right about Russiagate. And it's true, we didn't find any direct collusion between Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin. Or the Russian government. But a lot of people who worked in his campaign and surrounded Donald Trump were, in fact, in contact with Russian state.
I was going to say, there were multiple jailings. People were, like,
indicted in prison for this shit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, Russiagate was real. Insofar as it showed that there was a clear connection between the Russian government and the Trump campaign. Which means that there's also clear connections between the Russian government and the Republican Party. Funny that, right?
Plot thickens. Yeah.
The plot thickens. Now, this isn't conspiracy theory. This is just based off the evidence we have right now. This is one of the reasons why the Republican Party threw everything in the kitchen sink at the Mueller report and didn't stick. But this is where Kyle Kulinski gets to be a useful idiot. Because he fed off of a false narrative. He himself became a McCarthyite, participating in smears against people who were bringing up legitimate criticisms of how the Mueller report was being presented. But he went along with it. There's a term for this. It's called reaping the whirlwind. So, right now Kyle Kulinski is reaping the whirlwind of this. Instead of addressing the Mueller report and Russiagate as what it was, that there was clear evidence that there were strong connections between the Trump campaign, maybe not Donald Trump himself, but people who had a considerable amount of influence over Trump, who were involved with Donald Trump and the Russian government. The Jimmy Dore stands, Kyle Kulinski, many of these alt-lefters made the incredibly stupid decision to go along with a conspiracy theory of their own. That this was just a lie, that the Democratic Party, once again, couldn't accept its own failings and had to blame Russia for why it lost. Because they really fucking hate Hillary Clinton and they hate the Democratic Party. The root of all of this goes to they hate the Democratic Party, and therefore if they hate the Democratic Party, which I'm not a fan of, I hate it too, but I hate it less than I hate the Republican Party.
Yeah.
But I hate the Democratic Party, therefore I'm going to basically allow every single kind of smear, bad faith argument, conspiracy theory imaginable to be enforced against the Democratic Party without any pushback, because I believe it fulfills my ends. What kind of audience do you breed if you do that?
Very toxic one, I would argue.
Prone to conspiracy.
Mm-hmm.
As Kyle Kulinski is finding out, he is now Coward Kulinski for not defending Jimmy Dore. By many of his fans.
The thing is that he kind of did too. He just didn't defend him on certain points.
Wasn't he both sidesing it?
Oh, yeah.
He both sides it hard, dude. Oh.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm saying he's reaping the whirlwind. Now that being said, I think Kyle Kulinski is a good guy. But this should be a lesson in the stove is fucking hot, so don't touch it.
Yeah.
Conspiracy-minded individuals are some of the most dangerous people to get in bed with. Because they're not basing their opinions on reality. They have to have an explanation to why things are, but they don't want to take the time or the effort or do the research to figure out really why these things are happening. Because in order to do so, it will challenge their world, their perceived world beliefs, their pre-existing world beliefs, and they don't want to do that. Bernie Sanders would have won 2016 if evil Hillary Clinton wasn't allowed to do what she was able to do. Even though this was a long shot to begin with, the fact that he did as well as he did was incredibly surprising. And taking the L, moving on, and seeing what he was able to do with that is incredible. But in order to do that, it would require a knowledge of history, a willingness to actually have a nuanced perspective of life and politics, which these guys don't, and to not have a messianic complex or want to have like some hero rise up from the ashes to save us. And these guys are looking for heroes. They're looking for their voice. So this gets back to the other, that these guys are the true left-wingers. Once again, getting to the 14 points. They're the true. The true truth tellers. The honest truth tellers. In fact, when Jimmy Dore went after Kyle Kulinski, he claimed that he unmasked Kyle Kulinski. A common thread that was used by Nazis. Unmasking the Jewish conspiracy.
Yeah, he said he was showing his true colors.
His true colors, his true face. Jimmy Dore was stabbed in the back by that Kyle Kulinski. Jimmy Dore had to do what he did because he saw Anna Kasparian's ass, and that was inappropriate.
Yeah, you should have seen that skirt, guys.
You should have seen that skirt.
It was just so short. I had to say something.
He had to say something.
Yeah, she was teaching students.
It wasn't appropriate for a workplace.
Nice news skirt.
Hey, Anna, nice new skirt, you slut. That,
Oh my god.
that's what he said. That's what
I
he
saw
told
her ass. Like, dude.
Saw her ass cheeks because she was wearing a thong.
Why do you have to get that specific about it? It's so
Because he
weird.
probably looked at her ass and masturbates to it to this day.
Oh god. Yeah, and his wife just laughing in the background like,
Yeah.
oh, hello.
Um,
Probably what's happening.
Yeah. Oh.
Oh
when he
my
closes
God,
his
what a
eyes
mess.
when they're making love, he imagines that ass.
Oh. Oh god.
Yeah, I don't need that image.
Yeah, let's...
You got it
okay.
now. But that's the important thing, though. That's my key thing, though. So, Jimmy Dore is not left wing. Grayzone's definitely not left wing. And this gets to my point that being anti-imperialist and anti-war does not make you a left winger. Especially if you're lying through omission to hide the bad actions of specific actors in the region, like Russia and Assad. There is video evidence of the Russian government using Russian police and Russian soldiers supporting the Assad government taking over towns. There are Syrian civilians that were killed by the Russian military. If these guys were truly anti-imperialist, anti-war, wouldn't you think they would talk about the horrors of what was being unleashed by all sides? Being on the side of the Syrian people as they claim? They're not.
You would think so, but
They're not. Why not? Is it because the Russians just by nature are better-hearted, better, more decent people? Just naturally better-minded and not imperialist?
that's just a mystery right there.
It's a mystery, isn't it?
Yeah. Who knows?
The atrocities of the Syrian government. So this is my point. This is what I'm getting at. This is the difference between a populist and a demagogue. You want to know who a good example of a populist is? Bernie Sanders. Bernie Sanders is a populist. You know who's a perfect example of a demagogue? Donald Trump.
Yep.
Who's more like Donald Trump? Jimmy.
Mhm.
The Gray Zone.
Yeah,
A lot of these actors.
Yeah.
I see it.
Yeah.
Who's more like Bernie Sanders? AOC.
Yes.
Nina
Mhm.
Turner.
Yes.
Hell, even TYT.
So say my boy Vosh.
Vosh.
Rational National.
Rational National.
Yes.
All of these people who have been canceled by Jimmy Dore. Might I add. This is the
Yeah,
thing. This is demagoguery. Thing is, we're always going to have demagogues. Jimmy Dore is just a demagogue. I don't even want to use the word grifter. I don't care if he's grifting or not. He's a demagogue. He is benefiting from this politically by creating these outlandish arguments. And he's enforcing it through his cult of personality. So, I really think it's funny though that during that very same segment where he basically outed himself as a sexual harasser, Max Blumenthal was like, "Oh shit, I actually got to defend this guy."
When they put the camera, when they put the camera on him, and he was just like,
Yeah, Mia not talking about.
"You like get me out of
What are
here."
you trying to do here?
We're getting some interference from the CIA. We got to turn off the thing.
Yeah, perpetuating this idea that like, oh well, it's something that she was wearing, so that excuses my behavior.
Yeah,
It's
oof.
typical
Like,
sexual harassment
come
behavior.
on. And obviously TYT didn't care.
Mm-hmm.
So why do you care?
'Cause
Supposedly.
he has to have something to masturbate to, Garrett.
Well, yes, that's the real
I'm sorry,
reason,
like this just
probably.
strikes me as a dirty old man seeing something and saying something. It's projection.
It's really gross.
Yeah. It's kind of the whole thing of sexism. It's kind of funny how these guys don't really talk about sexism or racism either.
True.
Or they just throw it to the side. They're like, ugh. Like,
Or they
kind
use
of
it just as a
shake their head
trope
at it.
for once, and they oftentimes use it as a way of ironically going after Democrats.
Yeah.
You know who also says so much for the tolerant left? Is people like Jimmy Dore and Jimmy Dore stands.
True.
Because they don't like cancel culture either, guys. They think cancel culture's toxic too. As they proceed to cancel people constantly.
Yeah.
Kind of funny that, right?
Called Kyle Kalinske Coward Kalinske or whatever it was because
He earned that though. He earned that.
He did,
Well,
yeah.
If he would have kept his
Kyle-
mouth, you know, I would have had more respect for them if he just kept his mouth shut and just kept going.
He just rode the fence, you know.
He
Rode the fence.
he
and
doomed
eventually
himself.
you're gonna have to, you know.
Would have been a king based move if he would have gone out there and said, you know what, Aaron and Mate, Jimmy Dore, go fuck yourselves. I've been talking about Syria before, you know, Aaron Mate was, and I ain't funded by some Russian group, you gray zone fuck. And Jimmy, if you're my friend, then shut the fuck up. Just say you're sorry and leave me the fuck alone. That would have been king move. And you know what would have happened? They would have left him alone. He would have lost some fans.
I was going to say, I don't know if I'd
more.
agree with that just because of how much audience he kind of shares at this point. He would have lost quite a few subs, I feel.
I think so.
Yeah.
But, you know, the thing is that, what can you say against that?
Mhm.
Well, Kyle Kalinske was mean to me.
No, I agree. I think he should have, but I do think
That would've
there's
been amazing.
repercussions there.
I want nothing to say about this personal thing, Jimmy. From what I heard, just say you're fucking sorry and move on. As a friend, I'm telling you this. Don't give me this blackmail bullshit. We know it's bullshit. Don't bullshit a bullshitter.
Mm-hmm.
That's all you had to say. You got caught being a dirty old man. Say you're sorry. Recognize that you made a mistake and move on. But the thing is, you can't do that. You can't do that because if fascists show that they're weak, then they become the prey. They're unironically, the irony here is that they're unironically just the same as, you know, the Tucker Carlsons, the Donald Trumps, this, you know, strong man, the tough guy. I've never made a mistake in my life.
I wanted to get into something with this anyways, though, because the reason, like, I was cool with this topic in the first place is I don't really care too much about, like, public figures and whatnot. I wasn't really going into this segment with, like, the mentality of, like, oh, drama bait and, like, this happened. But I do find it very concerning how many lefties have been black-pilled after Bernie. And the reason I really did want to talk about this segment is that there's a lot of people that have, because unfortunately we failed twice.
Well,
We just haven't been able to garner like a full movement yet. But there have been successes in those failures. But I do think it's like what we were trying to accomplish didn't make it.
Well,
so I can see why people became, I guess,
jaded.
apathetic.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they became jaded. Like, the thing is that, and this is the thing, we're going to lose.
Mm-hmm.
We live in a democracy. We're going to lose. But we also have to realize that there was no left wing out there before 2016.
Yes.
Before 2016, The only left-wing voice were those crazy fuckers in the Green Party.
Mm-hmm.
Who I kind of see in the same line as I see the Gray Zone. You know, it's not really advocating for domestic development and for common people. It was always this really strange, heavy-handed moral authoritarianism. But anyway, and getting to your point, Davis, what really needs to happen is we need to take people as they are to a certain degree.
Mm-hmm.
So this cancel war bullshit, what we need to do is point out that it's just bullshit. Guess what? You're not going to get fired from your job because you say something awkward. You're going to get fired from your job if you sexually harass somebody. You go up to a girl and say, your tits are big, I like it. You're going to get fired.
Oh, God.
Deservedly so. Maybe you might not even get fired. You might be given a chance to kind of fix the situation. Sexual harassment is not making a mistake. Sexual harassment is contributing to behavior that is harassing somebody in a sexual manner.
Mm-hmm.
You can get fired for harassing people. You can get fired for a lot of things in this country. The question that I have is not, oh, well, did this poor guy get fired because of, cancel culture getting too far? Or maybe the question is, should it be so easy to fire people to begin with?
Yeah. Well,
and at the same time, go ahead.
Well, sorry, I was just going to kind of speak to what Davis was saying. I do think it's, because, we do live in a democracy, we are going to lose. I think it is all right to be pissed off.
Mm-hmm.
But I think when that goes to the point of where you're a Jimmy Dore stan and you're just, now everything is Hillary Clinton's fault no matter what, no matter who's doing it, that's taking your loss too far, and we do have to get over it, I guess, in a sense, and we have to go forward. But you are allowed to be pissed off, especially since there were so many smears against Bernie.
Oh, yeah.
It is ridiculous, but I do think at a certain point you have to not let that take you into a bad place.
Well, and it goes further into that.
Have you guys played football at all?
A little bit, yeah.
So I played football virtually since I was able to start playing football when I was a kid. And the thing is that you learn to lose. You are going to run against somebody, you're going to run up against somebody who's better than you. And guess what? Some games are not fair. Refs are biased. They have their opinions.
Yeah.
Sometimes calls go away that benefit you, sometimes calls go away that don't benefit you. So the reality is Bernie Sanders and his team knew what they were walking into in the Democratic primary both times. The smears that they had were so heavy-handed and obtuse that it eventually ended up backfiring on a lot of people.
Yeah.
Because it just made them look like hacks. Like Chris Matthews.
And this is kind of what I... Go ahead.
The dude compared Bernie Sanders supporters to fucking Nazis.
Yeah. And
Bernie Sanders lost family members to the Holocaust.
Mm-hmm.
It's outrageous. It's clearly outrageous. So the thing is that the lesson is we know we're going to walk into a field where the media is biased against us. The media is going to portray us as crazies, as nutballs, as mean. What we need to do is be strategic and disciplined enough to stick to the talking points. Because guess who did that? Bernie did that. He remained disciplined and kept this talking points. This is the reason why the Elizabeth Warren smear fell apart. It blew up in her face.
True, actually sank a good portion of her campaign.
Whatever hope she had died the day she did that.
With that freaking hot mic moment.
Well, it was pathetic because people saw it for what it was. I mean, not only was this an event that happened, months beforehand, it was poorly prescribed, it was poorly discussed, and it just felt like such a hatchet job that it clearly was. And on top of it, I mean, this is like right around the same time that Hillary Clinton says that no one likes Bernie Sanders.
Mm-hmm.
But what I found fascinating is who's the first person that went over to embrace Bernie? It was Joe Biden. Joe Biden walked over to Bernie and was like, no, I like him. So What we need to do, in this channel specifically, is to get people to think strategic, to think disciplined, but also to be pragmatic. One vote is worth millions of boots on the ground in a protest. We need to get people out to vote. We need to mobilize voter drives. We need to invest in our resources to get people to vote. We need to find ways of getting people the ID laws that are required for them. One way of circumventing these voter ID law programs is raising the funds, distributing those funds so people can buy those fucking IDs. That way we can get rid of these fucking ID laws.
True.
That's what I mean thinking strategically. We need to get more people out to vote on the day of election than the other guy. And guess what? That's going to require coalitions. It's going to require... Because all three of us have three different views of what our future want to be, right? But we're working
I would
with
say
one another.
so.
We're working with one another. We're friends with one another. I would say that you guys are my allies. Not just my allies. You're my friends. I love you guys.
Oh.
But that's the point. And by doing so, we break down preconceptions and barriers that prevent that from happening. You know what doesn't allow that? Being concerned about protecting your glorious leader. Why the fuck do people care about Jimmy Dore? Or even Bernie Sanders losing? Bernie Sanders took the loss like a champ.
Mm-hmm.
You know why? Because he's used to
really
losing.
did.
You win, you lose, you keep going forward. Why are we worried about Jimmy Dore and how he feels? How does that move the material condition of the people of this country forward? It doesn't. It's a distraction.
I don't care about it. Yeah.
It's the equivalent of it's the equivalent of a WWE porn fest. That's what this is. It has nothing to do with actual people's lives, of actually moving the material condition of people forward, of actually empowering people in this country. It's all about protecting the integrity of what? Jimmy Dore. What loss is this? This is a failed fucking comedian, okay, who's found a grift. Him losing his prime position as the lead bobblehead of the dumb left doesn't matter. It's not going to change a goddamn thing. It's not going to make anybody's life better. And it's not going to make anybody's life worse, except for maybe Jimmy. So why are we worried about this? Why? Because that's how these demagogues work. I am the chosen one, and I will lead you. Throughout American history, that we've always seen this. These demagogues rising up, and always and forever, it turns into a purity test of, I'm the true chosen one, you should only listen to me. So, what we need to do as leftists is we need to isolate Jimmy Dore and let his fans know that if they're not willing to grow up and put on big boy pants and big girl pants and figure out how to move forward, then they're no use to anybody. They can wallow. If I can't convince you that you have no power and that you're so disempowered, what am I, like, there's a ditch over there, you can go lay in it. If you actually want to do something, then let's grow up and realize you're going to lose. You're going to lose. We are going to make mistakes. We're going to fail. There's going to be bad strategic moves that we make. Why? Because we're human. And we live in an incredibly fluid and vibrant society whose opinions and perspectives flow over time. All we can do as the left is to try to shape that and contribute to it. That means we need to build institutions. That means we need to get support from institutions. And guess what? The biggest political institution in the country right now that is willing to at least allow us to participate in is the Democratic Party. There's no People's Party. It's not going to happen. They have no institutional support. Even the original People's Party of the United States didn't just spring up out of nowhere. There was the Farmers' Alliances. Man, I talked about this. Okay? This is years in making. This is why the Green Party is shit. They're not willing to do this. They're not willing to take that extra step forward to form these coalitions, to form these confederations of people. That's what the left needs to do. It's complicated. It's frustrating. There are going to be people in our movement that we're going to disagree with. But that's fine. Guess what? There are going to be people in our movement that are probably for interventions.
Yeah.
What do we do with that? Do we call them fake lefties and kick them out of our movement? Or do we practice ideological patience and make the argument of why we don't think intervention is the solution? Treating them as human beings that have morals, that have values, that really aren't that different from us. They just might have this opinion based off of X. And having that discussion and having that in the open without this turning into, well, you're just an imperialist State Department dog. You know, Gray Zone is shit. Jimmy Dore is shit. They're just Trumpers. They're Trumpers of a different shade. They're blue. They're just blue Republicans. That's all they are. They're not red Republicans. They're blue Republicans. Because the only thing that they are doing is benefiting the Republican Party in this country.
Yeah.
They're not building the Democratic Party forward. They're not building a progressive voice. They're not really bringing candidates forward that are able to win. You know, the reason why your candidates lose in Democratic primaries is because the primary voters didn't vote for them. Maybe, just maybe, if we actually care about this shit, we educate people on this, and more importantly, we actually create resources to get people to go to these ballot boxes. We hire vans. We find out through voter registration. We form community action groups to get these people out to vote in these primaries and get these people out to vote in the election. That's what we need to do. The civil rights movement understood that. They did that. You know how much they advocated to get people out to vote? To go vote? To get people to polling stations? It was overwhelming. It took tremendous time and effort, but they were able to do it.
Yeah, I agree.
So this is the left that we need to be. So what I'm saying here is that we don't have to... It's not the same as going up to a Trump voter who thinks that's a QAnon supporter and saying, you know what, I might not agree with you, but you know what, we both don't like the establishment, so let's buddy up. Because it's meaningless. What you do is you turn to a Republican or a conservative and say, you know what, you might not like Democrats, you might not like liberalism, you might not even like socialism, but you probably do support, you know, having a 4-day work week, right? You kind of do support getting paid a little bit more. Maybe having better access to credit. Maybe finding ways out of debt, right? You want that, right? Well, what can we do to do that? Well, here's a solution. We can all agree that there's... I mean, everybody and their grandma could see that a house is on fire, right? Hell, even Stevie Wonder could see that the house is on fire, right? The problem isn't that the house is on fire. It's an issue. The problem is, how do we solve that problem? We have to agree on solutions. We have to go forward with solutions. And we need to test those solutions out. Jimmy Dore doesn't represent that. Jimmy Dore is the guy screaming that the house is on fire, running around, bare ass naked, trying to get all the attention in the world while the house is burning. Claiming that anybody else who has any solutions is actually a liar, that he's the true one that recognizes that the house is on fire, and he's the only one that can see that the house is on fire. Just don't listen. These guys aren't your friends. They're not your allies. They don't give a shit about you. It's about making money. It's about that power. It's about that feeling of importance. Any thoughts, guys?
Me, as I said, that my last little thought here is this falls under, again, something I think is important and not touched up on enough is utilitarianism. At the end of the day, we need to have long-term goals. We need to figure out how we're going to hammer those down and accept that we're not going to get there with a straight line. Mm-mm. You have to take incremental steps to do that. At the end of the day, like, we knew the pitfalls we were going to come up against with Bernie Sanders and his campaigns. Mm-hmm. We shouldn't have been surprised when we lost, but now we just need to hammer it home again and just keep on going.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that know who your allies are, especially when it comes to, politics. And if you are a lefty, if you are a progressive, you have to not get into a headspace where now people like the squad, people who are close to, your ideology, or maybe somewhat close, depending on, what it is, they're not the enemy. And so they shouldn't be receiving all this backlash, basically just kind of lumping them in with kind of the more moderate centrist Democrats. They're not doing anything. They have just become what we hated all along. And I think that's very, very detrimental to our movement. And I think that, you need to, if you are falling into that, you need to take a step back and realize that that's a very, very unhealthy way to look at things. And that is not going to help us moving forward.
A good way of describing this is toxic populism. Because it's the same. They're going through all the same motions as populists, but instead of being optimistic and pro-people and tolerant and open-minded, they are being incredibly closed-minded and puritanical. And it's very toxic. Like, anybody who disagrees with you, if you have to go out of your way to defend your icon from insults, that's not a healthy relationship, especially if you don't know this person. You've never interacted with them on a personal level. And beware people who offer you all the solutions in the world but never explain them to you. There's a lot of people out there who make false promises and false statements of the answers, but they never deliver. So, and guys, we gotta support one another. Like, you know what? I have no problem being mean to QAnoners and Trumpers, but I mean, at the end of the day, we need to craft arguments that get people to support our solutions. Because ultimately, at the end of the day, that's what we're about. We got to get these policies through. So, this has been Goodfellas History. I hope you have a wonderful day.
Bye, guys.